This primarily happened to my mom, but this has badly affected me mentally too with worry. She wanted me to post this just to give people a heads up that you can encounter creeps literally anywhere. This is going to be a long-winded story, sorry, but I just wanted to get in every detail possible. This happened last month and we still don't actually know what happened with Jeremy in the end. I'm a 19-year-old female who is studying in a university in England. Entering my second year last month, we decided to stay in my university town the day before I was due to move in my student home, so I could get there early and move my stuff in and give me the rest of the day to relax before we started Freshers Week. The night before moving day, me and my mother stayed in a hotel located in my university town. We were greeted by a friendly man called Jeremy. Jeremy was very attentive and showed us to our room, and stayed around 10 minutes telling us the history of the hotel, and repeatedly asked us if we needed help unpacking and stuff, which we kindly rejected. It was a Friday, so me and my mother went around the town and had a few drinks. Nothing too heavy, as Freshers Week started the next day, so I wanted to be fresh for the Saturday night. Before going out, Jeremy explained that he never works weekends, so he told us to have a good night, and wished me luck with the rest of my university journey. He gave me a hug and gave my mother a hug, and a slight kiss while moving his hand down towards her bum, which she found weird but brushed it off as nothing. My mom is 37 but looks young for her age, and Jeremy is easily in his 40s, so we just thought Jeremy may have fancied his chances with her. Moving on, me and my mom have a great night around the town, and watch a couple of live bands and have a few wines, so we are a little on the tipsy side. We get back to the hotel and the bar is still open, so we decide to have a nightcap. While we are having a drink at the bar, Jeremy emerges from a back room and spots us and makes a couple of jokes. Jeremy then proceeds to watch a video on his phone on full volume of a woman screaming at the top of her lungs as she was being murdered. The screaming was blood-curdling and made me and my mom unsettled, and also another couple in the bar looked a little concerned as well. The video went on for 3 or 4 minutes before Jeremy laughed and went into the back. When we make our way to bed, my mom had taken her shoes off after they had become painful after dancing in the bars earlier. Jeremy emerges from the back room and puts his arm around my mom and says, "Oh, let me help you to your room, honey. You must be wasted after all that drinking." My mom isn't actually that drunk and insists that she's fine, but Jeremy persists and basically follows us to our room and proceeds to come in. But I bid him goodnight and close the door pretty much in his face before locking it. The next morning, we are up early and make our way down for breakfast. The young girl working takes our breakfast order, only for Jeremy to bring them out, insisting the eggs were cooked to perfection, although he claimed he never worked weekends. Me and my mom are weirded out by Jeremy at this point and check out straight after breakfast. Jeremy sees us out and says these exact words: "I'll be seeing you very soon, Christy." My mother's name. Anyway, at the time, it didn't strike us as unusual, and my mom drives us to my new home and helps me unpack and stuff. She helps me to unpack and then leaves in the early afternoon, as she had to work that evening in our local bar. The rest of the day goes by without much going on, but that night I'm out drinking with my housemates and I get a call from my mom saying that Jeremy had just come into the bar that she works at. This is no coincidence, as when we were having our nightcap, Jeremy would have heard us talking about the bar where my mom works, and he also had our address, which needed to be provided at the hotel for whatever reason. He had also said to my mom when she was pouring his pint that she would go around to his friend's house after his shift, which was just around the corner. This call really scared the crap out of me. About half an hour later, my mom called me and said that Jeremy had left the bar after she rejected his offer to go to his friend's house later. But Jeremy had said he'd be back for her later. This was really worrying, and I told her to make sure a customer was with her, as she was locking up on her own that evening. After this call, I felt sick and didn't join my friends in going to the nightclubs. In the meantime, I called my dad, who no longer speaks to my mom. They aren't on bad terms, they just chose not to keep in contact with each other after they split a few years ago. My dad is a club bouncer, but he wasn't on duty that night. But I called him and begged him to just drive down there and make sure everything was okay. My dad clearly knew by my shaky voice that I was panicked, scared, and helpless. 1 a.m. rolled around and I didn't get a response from either my mom or my dad's phone. I was worried, sick, and hoped that Jeremy hadn't been waiting around the corner and done something to my mom when she was locking up. At 1:30 a.m., my mom finally rang me in hysterics. As she had been locking up, Jeremy had pulled up in a car with 3 other men and shouted for her to get in for a ride. My mom declined his advances and he got out of the car and approached her and told her that he wouldn't tell her again. He said that she had been flirting and teasing him ever since she had checked in last night. She told Jeremy that was complete BS and she wasn't into him at all. As Jeremy got closer to her, she could smell heavy liquor. As Jeremy went to grab my mom, my dad pulls up behind the car and beeps his horn. This causes Jeremy to go back to the car and climb back in, and tells my mom that he knows where she lives and that he'll be waiting. The car screeches off. My dad then gets out of his car and tells her that I told him to check on her. Scared to go home alone, she asked my dad to drop her off at my grandparents' as she didn't want to be alone. After that night, we never saw Jeremy again, but my mom did make a report to the police about him and gave them a full account of what had happened, but she hasn't heard back from them. I'm just so relieved that my dad turned up to the pub when he did, as Jeremy would have been able to easily get my mom into that car, as she is only very small in stature, 5'2" and around 120 pounds. I just hope that scumbag got what was coming to him and is behind bars. My mom has been pretty badly affected by this and is only now comfortable being alone in her house. So Jeremy, I hope you rot in hell, and let's never ever meet again. Precursor. I've aged since then. I do not fall for these tricks as easily as I did then. I still hope for the good in people, but I usually doubt it's there for a while. I went to beauty school just after high school, so I was learning what it was like to be an adult, work, go to school, and socialize all at the same time. If you've ever gone to beauty school, you know the hours are pretty lengthy, and it's a lot of work in a short amount of time. You also know that you're mostly crammed with a lot of women of different ages and a few boys. If you're a straight man in the school, and he's even mildly attractive, obviously considering you're attracted to that type of person, most women in school are just so at awe because it's the only male person we are seeing during most of our weeks. That takes me to Dave, a few years older than me, tall, drives a Ducati to school, mysterious and handsome. Every girl was always putting on a little extra makeup, turning their hips towards him, flirting when he was around. He was cute, quiet, and always knew what to say. I wasn't as interested in catching his eye till he randomly asked me to meet up with him for a bite one day after school. I was single, needed to experience dating for the first time, and he didn't seem that bad to hang out with. Things started off pretty sweet and genuine. He had sent goodnight texts, jokes with me at school, and even genuinely seemed like he wanted to hang out more and more. We would go to bars and he knew everyone, so I could just get right in. I was underage at the time. We would go to eat, see shows, two-step, drink. I felt like I was starting to feel like an adult, enjoying the life and being wooed by a handsome, slightly older man. We would drive around on his bike. He would take me to nice, quiet dinners, always offered to pay, and even did little things like hold his arm when I walked downstairs or off a curb. I've never experienced this type of gentleman before. But as quickly as these sweet dates came, so did a very weird, calculated, and controlling behavior. He would start to ask why I didn't smile with my teeth. Was it because I was embarrassed of myself? He would sit behind me working at school and taunt me about how slow I was. He would say things like, "Don't sit like that," or say things that way. "That's not what ladies do, and I'm a lady, right? Don't wear that lipstick, it's trashy." But I guessed maybe I was being inappropriate. Maybe he's right. I should act more like an adult than a child. Be better at school. Look more like an adult. He brought me to his house one night, a place that he rented a room from. Suddenly, this stoic, Edward Cullen type turned into a person I didn't recognize, outside of the random mood shift. His room was filled with clothing and garbage, like old Gatorade bottles filling the floors. There was a TV and a bed. Of all the things I could really make out in this room. He brushed dirt off of his bed for me to sit down. We hung out for a while, and he oddly confessed he never brushes his teeth. Okay, well, looking in this room, I could believe that. He also mentioned that he just bought new clothes when he needed them, and never washed the dirty ones, he just left them there. This was all in the first 2 to 3 weeks. Kind of a red flag if you ask me. The lights were off at one point, and we were watching a TV show. I see a light like a cell phone right outside the window behind the TV. I jump in, get his attention, but he had to have seen. He brushes it off, saying that it might just be his roommate, though I noticed he's texting someone at the same time. I let it go for the night, eventually go home, but still feel uncomfortable. Then the phone calls started happening and these stories of his ex. They lived together. She was 10 years older than him and had a 6-year-old kid. She was crazy. If he and I would hang out, I would suddenly start getting calls from an unknown number the minute that I walked to my door. They would ring till my voicemail got them, and no one would say a word till the message ran out of time. They would happen every 10 minutes for 3 hours or so. I asked him about this, if it was him, and he said that it may just be his crazy ex. But how would she have my number? He would say, well, I had to give her some of her things and she stole my phone at one point and must have taken your number. Still, the gentlemanly dates would happen. And the gifts, oh the gifts. Sending roses and coffee to my work. Showing up with massage and spa packages every week. We still saw each other at beauty school almost daily. And he would be kind, but it was always hush-hush until it was outside of school. I was torn. Is this person lying? Or is this the first kind person to want to date me? Maybe he just had some flaws and a crazy ex. And then the texts and Facebook messages started coming, clarifying it was her. He's told me about your messed up life and secrets that you've told him. I know he just saw you. I know you were just at his house. I was outside the window looking in. Your red dress was nice. He laughs about you. Poor you, just a little girl. And crap like that over and over. I would block her then, and she would have friends send me the same BS. She freaked me out and he always denied it and apologized for her behavior. And then there were days he wouldn't show up for school and she would text me during the day saying they were together, sending pictures of him. I tried to confront him, but he would always deny having anything to do with her, and repeating that she wanted to ruin his life. And then she started going to my work, telling my coworkers she was my friend and would color things on kids' menus like Boy Slayer 666, plus Dave, heart her, and tell them that she wanted me to have it. She would send me a random picture of him in a booth at my work, and I would put the pieces together when I got there and got her notes, asking my coworkers where she was sitting and what she looked like. It was gross and embarrassing, let alone scary. My car was broken into at school and nothing was taken from it but a bill that had my address on it. I was then so scared. I could come out at any point in time and she would start calling over and over as soon as I closed the door behind me. I felt trapped. She would call my work and school saying that she was my mom and try to get more info on me, or call them as a customer trying to get me fired. My roommate finally kicked me out because they were rightfully frightened, so I turned to the police. They put me in contact with a detective who I handed all the calls, texts, and messages plus notes that she left at my work. I never answered the phone or responded to a single message from her. I had hundreds of calls, text for at least a month. They came in every day from the same number. I never blocked that number after the first few were blocked, so I could keep a log of all the attempts. Plus, I kept a journal of every incident leading up to me calling the police, just in case. I watch a lot of crime docs. He told me that there was nothing he could do to trace the number back to a specific person. And since she hadn't threatened my physical safety, his hands were tied. The very next day he calls me and is furious, telling me he can't help me if I'm harassing her back. I was confused, and when I asked what the heck he meant, he said, "You're calling a mother non-stop throughout the night, terrifying her and her kid." Because I was the 20-year-old and she was 36. Of course he's going to believe the adult, but I never called her. He asked me to come to his office to show me his evidence he has against me. And she forwarded him tons of texts saying things like, "I hope that she loses her kid," and I just broke down. I would never say something like that to someone. And I know I didn't send these tens of texts especially overnight when I had school the next day. But he didn't believe me and he dismissed me. He ultimately turned against me and was now on her side. This was crushing. I broke things off for good with Dave, basically told him to leave me alone. We still had to go to school together and he was a complete dick. I embarrassed myself in front of my friends at defending him so long. My work, my school, who I had to beg to make sure this girl didn't come around again, and a detective who ultimately didn't believe a word I said, just to get some peace. My friends were tired of seeing me, scared, stressed, and constantly talking about this weird situation happening to me. I was over it all. She finally left me alone once I moved, got a new car, a new phone, and deleted social media. But it still freaks me out to this day that we all live in the same town. She messaged me a few years ago from a different account when I was back on social media and said she was sorry, that she was manipulated by Dave, and that they did this to many girls. This was disturbing and gut-wrenching to me. Did a mother of a 6-year-old really have nothing better to do than play messed up games with a sociopath? Maybe two sociopaths together, I guess. I don't know. Dave and your ex, let's not ever meet again.